We're now going to hear from Linda Blades, who's from Canada. She's going to talk about the launch of the International Consortium on Female Sport. So Dr. Linda Blades is a former NCAA All-American and National Champion of Canada in track and field, heptathlon. She's got a PhD in Kinesiology. For the past 26 years, has run a private consulting business as sport performance professional coach in Edmonton, Alberta, working with athletes in over 15 sports, beginner level to elite. In 2014, Linda was elected to president of the board for Athletics Alberta, where she has a duty to represent the province of Alberta at Canadian national sport policy meetings. To amplify her lobbying efforts on behalf of the female athletes, Linda partnered with journalist Barbara Kay in 2021 to author a best-selling book titled UNSPORTING: How Trans Activism and Science Denial Are Destroying Sport. Linda is happy to report that 2 months ago she became coordinator of WDI Canada, and I'm happy as well as part of WDI to have her involved. Today, she'll reveal to us the next stage in the global journey to protect the female sports category. So thank you so much, Linda, for coming on, and over to you.
I'm just here to talk about an exciting, I think it would be, I can say, groundbreaking initiative. So we all know, and it's pretty obvious by now, most of us know that there's a growing number of men self-identifying into women's sports. And when I became aware of it, was around 2018, was the Rachel McKinnon, the Connecticut boys running in the girls' high school track. There was like Callum Fox. Then we understood back in even as early as 2014, knocking Tamika Brent out in the ring when she didn't know she was fighting a male. And now there's so many more. There's men identifying into women's skateboarding, rowing, rugby, surfing, and many, many more. And of course, we had Leah Thomas in the spring of 2022 winning the NCAA women's swimming. Outrageous. And if I circle back to Tokyo Olympics in 2021, we had Laurel Hubbard taking the place of Roviel Detenamo of Nauru. So Laurel Hubbard, a male athlete in weightlifting, took the place of a young woman who had never made it to the Olympic Games because Laurel Hubbard was there. One of the things, so when I came into this movement and understood what was going on and started fighting back, I made a major assumption that turned out to be false. The assumption I made was that if sports officials, if it's finally seen what's going on, if somebody goes into the Olympics and it's a man and everybody sees what's going on, sports officials will quickly fix. They'll be so ashamed and they'll quickly fix the issue and fix the policy. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. It seems like the opposite has happened. It seems like leaders are trying even harder to just ram this policy through, that those of us in women's sports, we just need to be kind. We need to be acknowledging. And an example of this in Canada is very captured, as you all know. But in the spring of this past year, 2022, we've been saying that Canadian women in sport, we never were consulted. And so quietly, Sport Canada launched a survey targeting high performance Canadian female athletes on their views on inclusion. And one trans activist found out about this, and they sent a heads up to the American Trans Ally, I think it's Athletes Alley, which is a trans activist organization by now. And Athletes Alley quickly arranged a petition where 200 signatures or something, mostly American, some Canadians, and the and Athletes Alley actually wrote and shamed the Canadian Minister of Sport into shutting down the survey of Canadian female athletes. So imagine a trans activist group from a different country got our Canadian Minister, our Canadian Ministry of Sport, to stop a survey of the high performance female athletes. So they don't want our voices. They're trying everything they can to stop our voices. And obviously that's not kind. So let's talk about then back in one of the things about the assumption that IOC and all these International Olympic Committee would have to react to Laurel Hubbard, well, they did. They did admit that the policy from 2015 allowing men to self-ID into women's sports without any surgery, that had to be, somehow it was not fit for purpose, something had to be adapted, adjusted, and they resumed some consultations on eligibility in women's sports in August of 2021. And we noticed on Twitter, those of us involved in women's sports, we noticed they were once again only consulting trans activists like Rachel McKinnon were basically bragging that they were being asked to go to Lausanne and talk at the table with the IOC. And of course, women, once again, were not being consulted. And so the great Catherine Beeves from Australia, who's a lawyer, sent a letter saying, well, can we have women at the table? Are women allowed to be consulted? Can we have women being consulted about this? And we did, surprisingly, because normally the IOC doesn't even pay attention to us, but IOC did respond quite quickly. And by September 2021, the IOC said, nope, consultations are closed. We've already talked to people like you, basically, like dismissing the women. And so it was a rejection, and it got even worse because then when the IOC announced its position at the end of 2021, a new revised policy, it was even worse than the one before. Because basically then they said it was up to each sport. Of course, it can be up to each sport to find their own eligibility guidelines. But the basic fundamental principle that was established in November of 2021 by the IOC was that from now on, it would be up to the female athlete to prove disproportionate competitive advantage if there was a man in her race. Like, what in the world? Like, a girl's just running a race. Is she supposed to end the race and just prove disproportionate competitive advantage in that moment? Like, how does that even happen? So anyway, what we did is we considered this, I personally, and a number of others, consider this to be a betrayal. So in what way was it a betrayal? Well, back 100 years ago in 2022, I'm going to show you a video right now. So this was the first women's Olympiad, women only. We had our own sport, and this is in Monaco, and we were actually drawing crowds of people. We were filling stadiums to watch women only sport. This was the first one, and then later there was more people in the stadiums. And it really, really made an impact. I'm going to let you watch a little bit of it, and I'll keep talking. You just keep on trying till you run out of cake, and the science gets done, and you make a This was 1922. The people who are still alive. I'm not even angry. I'm being so sincere right now. Even though you broke my heart and killed me, and tore me to pieces, and threw every piece into a fire. As they burned, it hurt because I was so happy for you. Now these points of data make a beautiful line. When we're out of data, we're releasing on time. So I'm glad I got burned. Think of all the things we learned for the people who are still alive. All right, so that's the end. So basically, we had our own Olympics going, and the men didn't like it that we were calling it the Olympic Games for women. And so there was this decision by 1928 to amalgamate and to bring the women's track and field into the Olympics. And so what we did at that point was essentially then allow our sports, women's sports, to be run, obviously by the men's Olympics. And ever since then, everything we wanted to do in the Olympic Games, we kind of had to have the approval of the males running the Olympic program. And we did make progress. I'm not going to say we didn't. But it took, for example, the women's marathon, it took 84 years for the men to allow women to run a marathon. So everything we did within the Olympic movement always had to be with petitions and asking for favors and asking for parity and asking for like that we would have the same number of events and opportunities as the men. And so we successfully, well, we did that, but it was still mostly up to male leaders and to allow us. So basically, we've had 100 years experiment where we basically conceded the control of our sport to men's organizations, and again, like with the NCAA and everything, like it seemed to work well. But now with when men start coming into our sport and want to self-identify into our sport, basically, really, it's up to these guys to make that decision, and we really are helpless. And so we don't want to be helpless. We want to say the 100 years experiment of just conceding our power to those organizations to run our sports, maybe that's 100 years experiment that sort of worked, but maybe we can improve and do better. In 2022, after realizing that the IOC was never going to listen to us, wasn't going to really concede or give us any kind of seat at the table, we had a bunch of women and all the groups around the world who are specifically dealing with the women's rights and women's sports, like Fair Play for Women in the UK and Save Women's Sports USA and COSBAR in Canada. A lot of us decided to just come together and start meeting and maybe form a new global partnership of women advocating for other women in sport. And we are calling this the International Consortium on Female Sport. And we just finished in this last about a month ago, finishing this logo. We're quite proud of it. A man named Gord in Calgary helped us develop this. He's a designer. But you can see the two X's for biology in our logo. You can see the celebrating woman or celebrating person. And you can even see the W for women in there. So it's a nice logo, and we really, really like it. But the whole point of it is to collectively represent the female voice in sport. And please take note of this link. This is the link to our new website. And it's really important that we're going to spread the word about this link, because I'll explain why. I just want to reinforce the fact that what we're doing is actually absolutely in line with the WDI, especially Article 7. And we're completely 100% in favor of obviously supporting and affirming sex-based rights of women in sports. And further to Article 7, let's read it aloud. Article 7, reaffirming women's rights to the same opportunities as men to participate actively in sport and physical education. The founding principle of the ICFS is fairness and safety for female athletes in sport is ensured by having a dedicated category for those born female. What does this mean? Really, what we're saying is when it comes to sports, like I have to be involved in this in Canada, there should be a category, a female category, and whatever else you want to do. If there's trans people and you want to put them somewhere else, that's a different issue. But there has to be one category in sport dedicated to the female athlete. That's what we're saying. And all members of this group agree with the following 3 statements. Sex equality matters in all aspects of life, including in sport. In accordance with the tenets of the International Bill of Human Rights, the intent of the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, Article 10G, and the precepts of the Women's Declaration, Article 7, women and girls have a right to access and participate in sports in a manner that is fair, safe, and without discrimination. To be denied this right is discrimination on the basis of sex. Statement 2, it is the consortium's position that policy discussion on eligibility in women's sports pertaining to any level, community, regional, national, and international, and or involving any jurisdiction must involve women who advocate for or who work or participate in female sport, including meaningful consultation with female athletes in question. And finally, the statement number 3, the ICFS is a nonpartisan single-issue collective of women's sports advocates. That means that membership or partnership with the ICFS in no way indicates political affiliation with fellow members regarding any other topic. This is simply and specifically about sport. We welcome all voices who are going to protect females in sport. So the purpose of the ICFS is to serve as the key international lobby group to advocate for the preservation of the female sport category. What does this mean? So that we can be involved in sports negotiations at the highest level to the regional level. In other words, the 100-year experiment is over. We need to start taking control and responsibility for women's sports as well. We want to hold sports accountable, and we want to congratulate those sports who get the policy right. We want to raise awareness of unfairness and unsafety with female sports whenever it's going on. And we want to be a place where girls and women can go for help. We want, for example, even this next week, once we get going, we're writing letters on behalf of a female weightlifter. There's people now already starting to come to us for assistance. Monday, January 9th is a huge day. This is the global launch of the ICFS. There will be a press release being sent out to 5,000 news outlets around the world that we exist, that we're here. And the simple message is women around the world are assembling to take our sports back. We're going to take our control back, at least to the extent that we have global representation. These are posters. So you get ready, you're going to start seeing posters like these going out. And, if you don't mind, just retweet them, share them on social media. This is our chance to get the word out to all the women and girls, even in remote areas that we do want to be there. The chance for us to win and to get our sports back. They need to understand we're speaking on their behalf, because, I've even mentioned it. There was some figure skaters yesterday I was talking to, and they don't want to say anything when their sport association giving away their sport. But if they know we exist, it encourages them to speak up and say something. Really, it's especially important that young girls and their supporters all around the world visit the site and link and just like the declaration, sign the form that says they agree with us. It's important that we have numbers. The more numbers that we have, the more validity will be our claim that we are the largest sport advocacy group for women and girls globally. And here's a part of the website that shows it'll scroll. So this is only one small portion. It shows the collection, the core group of sports or core collection of sports groups. Here's the list of the core groups that got together. Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights, COSBAR from Canada, La Rueda Rosa Cycling Group from Mexico, Save Women's Sports Australasia, Alianza contra el Borrado de las Mujeres in Spain, Save Women's Sports Spain, Fair Play for Women UK, Sex Matters Advisory Group, and that's the one with Emma Hilton and Kathy Devine, and Champion Women USA, Icons, the Independent Council on Women's Sports USA, Save Women's Sports USA, Women's Sport Policy Group. So we have now about groups from 10 countries, all working together already. Our goal is we were inspired by the WDI to get 150 countries like we have in the WDI. It's really, really important that when you get to the website that you click as an affiliate member. You won't be the core member if you're not directly involved in sports. But if you agree with our statement of position, please go and sign. And the more numbers, you can be an affiliate group, like as an organization, you can be affiliate as an organization group, or you can be an individual affiliate just as a person. And that's for the young girl athletes who want to just come onto our page and say, yeah, I agree with you. I want emails. I want to be in touch. So again, the legitimacy is the numbers. It's really important that we have numbers that we can tell, the IOC at some point, like we have 100,000 women that we represent, because one of the biggest problems was, if you go back to 2021, when the IOC refused to consult with women, there is a legitimate question as who does represent the woman's voice. Like if it would have been me at the time in 2021 that would be invited to Lausanne, Switzerland to meet at the table at the Olympic Committee, well, who's Linda Blade? I mean, who do I represent? There is the question when it's 50% of the world's population, who does represent that voice? There's a lot of, as we know, intersectional feminists who would actually argue the opposite position as us, as you've seen on Kay Yang's presentation. So the more numbers we have, the more we can say we are the voice for the female athlete, and we deserve a place at the table, and we will continue to advocate, and we will not take the erasure of our sport sitting down. We will fight back and reclaim the control. Please join us, and thank you for this opportunity.